You're listening to episode 25, How to Know When It's Time to Make a Career Pivot. Welcome to Your Career Story Podcast, a show that's designed for rock star professionals looking for that extra booster shot of confidence in their careers. Whether you're trying to get clarity on a job transition, want some work-life balance inspiration, or need a strategy to snag that promotion or raise, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Jenna Viviano, ex-Wall Streeter turned startup junkie who now coaches hundreds of clients, empowering them to take back control of the job search and land their dream job. So sit back, grab a glass of wine, and prepare yourself for your weekly boost of career confidence. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Your Career Story Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today, but I'm extra excited. We've been in a sea of solo episodes where I've kind of been workshopping out different things about how to make a career pivot, how to find a job across the country, all the nitty gritties. But today we're actually going to have a guest on, and her name is Kat Harris. We had connected in New York City and kind of got reconnected, and then we finally actually did some kind of podcast episodes together. So I want to introduce you to Kat. Kat is a Brooklyn-based online educator, digital content creator, female empowerment advocate. You know I'm all about that. She loves God, a good Beyonce dance party, me too, and an affinity for ranch dressing. Her vision is for women to know their beauty, identity, and value. And you guys might know her as the co-founder of the online publication, The Refined Woman, and the host of the Refined Collective podcast, which I personally recommend and personally love. So Kat, thank you for showing up today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And yeah, it's been so fun getting to know you better and chat with you. And I'm just excited to continue our conversations.
Yeah, I feel like we're very similar in that we both had a lot of career pivots in our life.
Yes.
And so that's what we're really talking about today is how to know when it's actually time to make a career pivot. But let's start at the very beginning. What did you want to be when you were a little girl? Like when you grew up and you envisioned your life and your career, what did you want to be?
Well, when I was a little girl, there were three things I wanted to be. I wanted to be Amy Grant, Gloria Estefan, or a professional tennis player.
I love that.
I remember my mom was like, "You can't be Amy Grant." And I was like, "Who are you to tell me who to be? Why not?" Like, I didn't understand that you couldn't be a person. And I just wanted to be Amy Grant and Gloria Estefan, and then also a professional tennis player. And one of those things almost came true, and it wasn't the first two. I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to a D1 school to play tennis in college, and I coached tennis for years. So that was kind of like the only little dream of mine that came true.
Well, it's funny you say that because when I was a little girl, I wanted to be Mariah Carey.
Yeah.
And I told my mom that I wanted to be Mariah Carey, and she was like, she was trying to teach me that fame isn't something you strive for necessarily. and I was like, oh, she just doesn't believe in my dreams. Like I was such a snotty little girl.
I know. Like, why don't you believe in my dreams? Although now as an adult, I'm like, I was like 6. You could have just let me you didn't have to give me the hard cold facts.
Where did you go to college then that you played D1 tennis?
Yeah, I went to University of North Texas. So it's in Denton, Texas, a little bit north of Dallas. But I actually talk about pivots. My first really big life pivot was 2.5 years into my full ride scholarship that I had worked most of my life to get. I knew that the only way I'd ever get to go to college is if I got a full ride. And so tennis was my ticket to do that. 2.5 years in, I had a really difficult collegiate athlete experience. I had a really, I'm trying to be careful with my words. I had a really toxic coaching situation there. And I was kind of stuck in my scholarship and I got super injured. I really hurt my back. And it was kind of like the first death of this dream to me. Tennis was the first great love of my life. And I breathed, loved it, sweat, blood, sweat, tears, all the things. And then I'm midway through college and I'm this thing that I loved for so long became this massive source of pain for me, physically, mentally, emotionally. And I just knew I had to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a time in my life where I was like really new in my faith and felt like, oh my gosh, like I just want to learn so much more about my faith. And so I took this, like, much to the surprise of literally every person in my life. Like, my family was like, what are you doing? Like, you're crazy. I left my full ride scholarship and transferred to a small Bible school to become a Bible major. And
what school was that?
Dallas Baptist University. Okay. So I actually graduated from DBU with a Bible major.
Wait a minute. So that is insane. Wait, so how did your parents, like, how were your parents during that process? Because I know for me, when I was going through all of my many major changes, I think it was probably, I don't want to say frustrating for my parents. They were just kind of confused as to like, wait, what? You were going towards this and now you're going towards this and this and this and this. And I think they were just confused. How did your parents react to that?
Yeah. Well, I also think 2020 hindsight, right, is so clarifying. Going back, I mean, I really don't believe in any such thing as regret. Like, I really think every opportunity is an opportunity to grow if we choose it to be. But if there was a situation that I wish I would have handled differently, it would have been how I left and when I left. Because I think, I was young. I felt this conviction like, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here and I need to get out of here now. So I left between semesters, between fall and spring semester, which really put my team in a real bind. I burned a lot of bridges. But like in the moment, I was like, this is what I have to do. Like, this is my conviction. I'm standing up for what I believe in. And,
we're all zealots at some point.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So, if I could do it differently, I would have definitely waited till the end of the year and perhaps even like finished out the 4 years, but I didn't choose to do that. And God works all things together for the good of those who love him.
Yeah.
So my family, my parents were very upset, and more so because, I think I was new in my faith. I was super passionate about it. And there was a disconnect there. They were like, who is this like person who's like so obsessed with God, and like, why do you have to go to a Bible school? And so I think I felt like really misunderstood, and honestly felt like I had kind of like walked out of my family's blessing. So it was a really hard time to navigate, and it was really lonely because for the first time in my life, I kind of made this really big decision that my parents didn't agree with. And it was really hard. And I think, since then, I've had this very interesting life path. Like, nothing about my life has turned out the way I thought it would. And there's definitely even still moments, I'm an entrepreneur now. I run 2 businesses where I think our parents' generation was so loyal and so faithful to one job. And, the older I get, the more I'm like, wow, like my stepdad has stayed at a job that he has hated for decades because that's what he had to do to provide for his family. Yeah. And I respect that so much. And what a privilege that I have come from a place where I have been told that I can dream big dreams and that I can change my mind. And so I think in the pivots, that's been confusing for my parents, and my, my aunts and uncles in that generation are like, wait, like, what are you doing? Like, what about stability and loyalty? And I do believe in those things, but it's just, my path has taken me on very unexpected twists and turns.
Yeah. So let's talk about those. So you were a Bible major and now you're doing online education and photography. So talk me through kind of when you say that your life didn't turn out exactly how you planned it. I think pretty much 99% of us can relate to that.
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody has a straight career path anymore, especially in the way the technology is. Just think like 20 years ago, Facebook didn't even exist. Now we have whole industries that are dedicated to that product in and of itself. So what happened? So Bible major, what happened after that?
Well, kind of before that, like I actually never wanted a career. I mean, I know that's like faux pas to say that as like, we're like girl power, go women, like chase the dream, future is female, whatever. But, after me wanting to be a professional tennis player and Amy Grant, I have always wanted to be a wife and mother. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I really valued that. And that was like my goal. I was like, yeah, I'll go to college, I'll play tennis, or, I'll get this degree. But my plan was that I would graduate college, meet Mr. Right, probably my junior year. We could date a year, graduate college, get married immediately. We'd buy a house. I'd start popping out babies. And that was kind of it. And that definitely did not happen. So I graduated with a Bible degree. 2 weeks later, I moved from Dallas to San Diego to live in an intern house with 50 people. What's that?
I love San Diego.
I know, it is a really special place. And so I worked for this nonprofit and traveled around the nation doing advocacy, public speaking, hosting national events to raise awareness about this conflict that was in northern Uganda at the time. And so I was making $7 a day. So, not only did I quit tennis and then become this Bible major, but then I graduated with a college degree. And my first job out of college, I'm making $7 a day. Mm-hmm. Like my family's like, who in the hell are you? Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
So then after that, I stayed in the nonprofit world for a couple of years. I got a job at another nonprofit, and it was just a really bad fit. And I remember at that time, one of the people I knew from my former organization always said, you have to take a job that you are using your skills. Like, yes, it's important to believe in the cause, but if you are in a position that you are not utilizing your strengths, you're going to end up resenting the cause. And that definitely happened to me. I was totally not in my wheelhouse and was kind of at this place where I was like, what am I doing? Like, oh, what am I good at? Like, I'm in this job that I hate, and what's happening here? And at that time, I had been my previous job. So first nonprofit, my old boss had a meeting with us one day, and he was like, all people are creative. Like, if God is real, like, God created humanity, and humanity reflects the creator. So there's creativity pulsing within all of our beings. It's just tapping into that thing that lights us up, getting really good at it and using it for good. And so I always had this dream of doing photography, but I was like, I'm an athlete and I'm not creative. And so I would look around and see all these beautiful images and incredible artists and think, well, that's for them. That's not for me.
Limiting beliefs. So, totally.
Yep. Limiting belief. And that conversation with my old boss really opened something up for me. I was like, what if I could be an artist? Like, what if that actually could be me? So fast forward, I'm in this other just dead end job that was going nowhere fast and complaining about how much I hated my job and my life. And one of my friends was finally like, all right, I don't know, am I allowed to cuss on your podcast? She's like, you either
at PG.
Okay. She's like, you either need to or get off the pot.
Yep. My dad says that phrase all the time.
Yep. And so she's like, you've been talking about photography for all this time. Why don't you just go for it? So somehow I ended up connecting with one of the top photographers in the nation, quote unquote, randomly at this event. And I had zero experience, didn't even know how to turn on a camera, and somehow found my way in a full-time job with him as his assistant, editor, shoot producer, PR. Like, I did all the things. So I worked full-time for this guy in the photography world for 4 years. Wow. And in that time realized, wow, like, I actually am good at this. Like, I am good at photography, and I developed this passion that I didn't even know I could have for this thing. And I started getting booked on my own jobs. And then through him, got to go to New York City for the first time and shoot Fashion Week. And then I got hired on my first editorial campaign that got picked up for a cover shoot for a print magazine. And it ran twice nationally. And so then I was like, whoa, like, I had never wanted to start my own business. Like, was never a desire of mine. But then I got to this place where I felt like, I feel like this is the next step. And so I started my own photography business. And then I moved from LA to New York City to pursue editorial photography. And in the meantime, I had started this small little style blog with one of my friends, The Refined Woman. And then I moved to New York. And within that first year, I had a list of dream clients and got most of them and was like, oh my gosh, I actually really hate this. Like, this is not what I like.
I made it and I hate it.
I know. And that was shocking to me. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is what I've been working for years now, like 6, 7 years. And this is not what I want. And then in that time, The Refined Woman really started taking off. And now The Refined Woman is the majority of what I do. And that's really shifted in the last few years. My business partner left about 2 years ago. I invested into a business coach for the first time, paid tens of thousands of dollars for that, and really gained clarity about direction. And whereas it was a style blog before, it is almost exclusively now a resource and space for women of faith who are navigating things like singleness and how do I date in modern culture and how do I practice self-care and what about mental health and how do I identify limiting beliefs in my life. So I'm at this point, I'm like, honestly, what my prayer is there's this scripture in the Psalms of the Old Testament of the Bible, and it says, unless God builds the house, the builders build in vain. And I finally just kind of gotten to this place where I'm like, God, you build this house. Like, you show me the next step, because clearly, like, I want to have big dreams. And I think it is so important to be very clear and specific, because in order to walk out the present with clarity and intention and strategy and hope, we have to know where we're headed. So I'm very clear on like, what's my 5-year plan? Where do I see myself in 10 years? And then kind of release that to God and be like, all right, but you're building this house and you lead me step by step.
Yeah. So when these transitions that you had, was there like moments where you're like, I think for your first job, it sounded like, okay, it was like drop dead. I got to get out of here. I call them like the 15 mosquito bite. Like, you're like, I have to get out or I'm going to go crazy.
Right.
And then were the other ones just kind of more like nudges that you're like, I think it's time to move on? Or was there anything in particular that you felt like was like your stake in the ground that you were like, okay, it's time for me to move on?
Yeah. So I would say for starting my own photography business, that was kind of like it was a really big leap of faith because, I had been working for this guy who is one of the top photographers in the nation. And I had reputability because I was connected to him, and I got jobs that I quote unquote shouldn't have been getting because I was working for him. And I also felt really loyal to him, and like he had opened up this whole world for me. So it was a little bit of this like mind screw of like, I feel like I owe this person my career and my loyalty. But like over the more and more time that passed, I felt this like inner conflict of like, oh my gosh, I feel like I want to do my own thing and I feel like we're going in different directions, but I felt guilty for wanting to leave. And, I struggle, like there's some people like one of my mentors says like, okay, you're on the Titanic. Which person are you? Are you the person that like jumps ship as soon as the boat starts sinking? Or are you the person that's like, I am staying on the boat until it sinks and it's at the bottom of the ocean? Typically I have been the latter. Like, and that has come from an unhealthy place. I grew up in a home with addiction and lack of boundaries. So from an unhealthy place, I can like kind of hold on to things way too long. So I think that definitely happened in this situation. I was young. I didn't have good boundaries. I felt really loyal and this massive sense of gratitude for this person who took a chance on me and really invested and mentored me and opened up this whole new world. But it finally got to a place. I mean, there was definitely a specific moment in New York where we were shooting and we just kind of like were butting heads. And I just felt like I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I was really scared because I knew that when I left, it would instantly cut my rates in half, if not more, because I was leaving the reputation of his name. But it was like one of those things that I was like, I just can't, like, I can't stay, like, I have to do this.
Right.
And I will say it was 10 times harder than I thought it would be. Like, once I finally did quit, I felt this sense of liberation, but then then the hard work started. Then I was like, oh yeah, like, it is really hard to start a business. And I wasn't starting from ground zero, but maybe like floor one.
Mm-hmm.
And my first year in business, I made less than $15,000. And
were you in New York at this time?
No, I was in Newport Beach.
Okay.
But my first year in New York, when I pivoted, like when I moved my business from LA to New York, I made less than $15,000.
How did you survive?
I mean, honestly, I look back and I'm just like, those were the days.
Oh my God,
like,
that's so funny.
I like YouTubed Beyonce choreography dances to work out. And I just was very, very frugal.
Yeah.
And
man, I'm so impressed by you.
So yeah. And then I think with the Refined Woman, the big pivot with the Refined Woman was 2 years ago when my business partner left. And that was kind of a long time coming. Mm-hmm. And if there was like anything I can tell anyone who is starting a business with their friend, like we were always like, why do people say not to run businesses with your friends? Like, this is so great. So like, we didn't do any contracts in the beginning. Mm-hmm. We did an LLC. We didn't have a bank account. Like, we didn't have like systems set up or expectations or this is your role, this is my role. So it was like we were 5 years in and constantly disappointing each other because there were like no roles. And
sure.
I felt like, oh my gosh, like I'm ready for this to move on, but there's literally nothing in writing where we can have this conversation. And I feel like there was a lot of grace over when that time actually happened, and God really protected our relationship, and we're still incredible friends. But kind of like, it was like one of those things where I was like, all right, when I finally get my own thing, I'm going to do all these things. And then I got my own thing and I was like, well, oh crap, like which direction do I want to go into now?
Yeah.
And that was when I really started thinking strategically about, all right, if this first of all, like if this is going to be a business, I got to actually treat it like a business now. So, if I want other people to take me seriously, I got to take myself seriously. So that's when I LLC'd, I opened a bank account,
right.
I created a contract for myself. I set like regular business hours. I hired a business coach and kind of put my money where my mouth was. And so
you leveled up is what you did.
I leveled up.
Yeah.
And it's definitely
seriously. Yeah.
Right.
Awesome.
Right. So now I still run my photography business. It's still a big portion of my income. It's a massive portion of my income, but I'm grateful to have like both streams, and I am hopeful and anticipatory about the time where I can go full time into the Refined Woman, but it's just, that's not the place I'm at now.
Yeah. I think a lot of people struggle with exactly what you're talking about, of like the loyalty piece, especially when you're talking about that person who gave a chance on you, like, right. Mm-hmm. I see a lot of people. I myself was exactly the same way when I had my investment banking gig. Mm-hmm. The guy who gave me a shot, he allowed me to intern in both New York and London. He finagled a bunch of things. He got me in the door, and I quit within 9 months. And I felt so guilty about that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, here is this guy. He gave me this shot. I probably didn't deserve it, but he's giving me a chance and I owe him everything. And my dad said something to me that was really interesting. And I talk about this in a different episode of the 21st episode of this season. And I talk a little bit about this because my dad said to me, he goes, Jenna, a company will only be as loyal to you as what makes financial sense to them. So sometimes you just have to make strategic career decisions for yourself. Yeah. And that sometimes means leaving. Sometimes it means staying, like you were saying, but sometimes it does mean leaving. So I don't think that you're alone in that. And I think a lot of people can get some just see the perspective if they are in a similar situation and they're thinking about making a career pivot, but they're really not sure because they're worried about the guilt, the shame, and the loyalty and all that other stuff.
Right.
I think hearing your story is really fascinating. And what I also see in kind of everything that you were talking about is that you made quarter of returns. You kept making quarter of returns. And I really think that that's how a lot of people should make. It may have felt like a total overhaul for you, but really, if you look at the trajectory of your whole career, it was like a quarter of a turn towards closer the things that you want to be doing.
Yeah.
And you believed in yourself across the way, which I think is half of people's battle is they have limiting beliefs about if they're capable of doing it. Would you agree with that?
1000%. I wouldn't say that's half of the battle. I would say that's like 99.999%. And I'll say, frankly, I struggled with and continue to struggle with self-doubt all the time.
Yeah.
And I think, I constantly, so what happened in college tennis for me is I got to this place where, I had this full ride scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
And as a freshman, I was on the number one doubles team. We broke records for the school for the amount of wins that any person has ever had. Like, I was doing really well. We were ranked in the top 15 nationally as a doubles team. Wow. But secretly, I never felt like I belonged there. Like, I felt like I was going to be found out. And ultimately, that was one of the breakdowns in my tennis game, is when it really came down to it, I was like, I don't feel like I'm good enough to be here. And my coach would always say, like, you get so intimidated by someone's jersey. Like, you're better than the person at, USC or wherever, but you see their jersey and you get intimidated and you take yourself out of the game. And it was a massive struggle when I was an athlete. And I remember quitting. One of the things that felt like such a relief is I was like, I'm done just being riddled with insecurity. And it felt like a relief for a really long time until I got about 5 years into shooting. And I was, starting my new business, and I was like, I want to do workshops, and there's all these things that I wanted to do. And that old familiar fear of feeling not good enough and comparing myself like reared its head. It was like, I started going to therapy because I was like, this feeling that I haven't had in a really long time is back. And I'm starting to realize, like, it didn't have to do with tennis. It had to do with me from a very core level, feeling not good enough. And so what would happen is I would take myself out of the game before I even gave myself a shot. So for photography, I want to do this workshop. And then I'd see, that girl's doing one and she already has a bigger following than I have, and people like her more than they like me. So it was like I had trained for a marathon and then got to the marathon, and before the race even started was like, well, her Lululemon pants are better than mine, so I'm just not going to run the race. And so I just made a really strong commitment to myself in that time period. I was probably 26, 27 at that time. Was like, fear does not get to be in the driver's seat anymore. And if the door doesn't open just because that's not the door God has for me, then great. But if it's because I'm holding myself back out of self-doubt, which when we self-doubt, we self-sabotage. And when we let fear in the driver's seat, it just keeps us small and stuck and hidden. And so I just felt like I'm not going to repeat what happened in my tennis career. Like, I get to break through this. And so it's funny because, like, my dad will say, you're so fearless. Like, you're my fearless girl. And I'm like, are you kidding? I'm freaking afraid all the time. But I have finally decided that, okay, it's not about the absence of fear. It's about where fear is in my life, and saying, okay, I see you, I acknowledge you, but I'm going to go ahead and go for it anyways. And so I've just been really committed to, when the fear comes up, when the doubt comes up, bringing it to the light, talking about it with other people. And I literally, I'm at my desk right now and I have truth statements. I have truth statements all around me. I have the permission to lead. You can do this, Catherine. You are able. So yeah, because I think no one was telling me no in tennis, but I told myself no. No one told me I couldn't do a career pivot. No one told me I couldn't host a workshop. I was just telling myself no. And I think that is the number one thing, where so many of us are waiting for the permission. Especially as women, guys don't deal with this as much as women do, just statistically. We are if we don't feel like we're 150% qualified for the role, we're not even going to put our name in the hat.
Yeah,
and
so true.
I just think the biggest breakthrough I constantly make is choosing to show up for myself. Right now I'm writing a book, and almost every day I'm I'm not the girl for the job. I'm so not cut out for this. I can't do this. And then I'm like, okay, fear, thank you. I acknowledge you. I know you're trying to protect me, but I'm going to do this anyway.
Yeah. I think fear can also be sneaky. So I don't necessarily struggle with that because I'm always like, I can do it. Of course I can do it. I'm like I kind of had like a dude mentality because I do see that a lot with my female clients. So my female clients actually just wrote about this on LinkedIn, and I had a male ironically comment on it and saying that I was ridiculous. And I was like, that's because you're a dude. You don't see that. But I basically said that, like, if you're not 100% qualified for the job, apply anyways. What's the worst that can happen? And the reality is that most men, if they're like 50, 60% qualified, they'll apply for it. Women, they have to be like 95% qualified and then they'll apply for a job. And I'm like, what? No, I would have never gotten to where I was in my career if I was betting on myself doing 100% of the, the tasks that they have on a job description. Like I moved from finance to sales, no correlation. I was definitely not 100% qualified for the job. So I don't think that has always been my issue. My issue is actually that fear shows up when it gets me comfortable. So my comfort and fear are kind of very much related. I'm in that season in my business right now where fear looks like I'm really comfy in my like my one-on-one coaching that I'm doing right now. And it's kind of keeping me comfortable and keeping me set so that the thing that I actually want to move towards, doing courses, doing more content creation, providing that type of work, is like holding me back because I'm scared of like what that is. So it's like I'm comfortable and scared at the same time.
Totally.
So it's less about I can do it. It's more about like, well, I'm just comfy here. It's fine.
Right. And for me, one of the biggest signs that fear is in the background of my life is when I am paralyzed to move.
Yeah, totally.
And you can call that feeling comfortable. I think another word for what you're describing is feeling stuck, and which I think is one of the, like, an agenda of fear and shame, like small, stuck, hidden. And, which I think another caveat to say is, we're also in this generation we're always looking for bigger, better, better. And I'm like, you know what? Like, if you want to have a coaching business where you stay doing what you're doing for the next 10 years, like that is okay. Yeah. Like, we don't always it's so easy to compare, now I have this course for single women of faith, and, I have friends that have multi-million-dollar launches, and I'm like, so is my 5-figure launch a failure? Well, no, like, do I have to aspire to a 7-figure launch? Like, if that's my vision and if it's what I feel like is the thing that I'm like wanting to do and being led to do, then yes. But I think it's also really fine to stay where you're at as long as you're coming from a place of wholeness and freedom. Sure. I think it's what's the driving factor, I think, which is what you're talking about. And when fear is the driving factor, there's that sense of paralysis, as opposed to this is what I'm doing. And I really like this, and I feel like I'm in my lane and I want to stay here. As opposed to that little small voice inside you that you're pushing aside because you're like, oh, I don't know, this does feel comfortable. There's it's different energies, So I think it's super important to be all right, what is behind the statement? What is behind the belief? What is behind the action?
Yeah, 100%. I see that show up so much in my own career and other people's careers of just what is the purpose behind what we're doing, right? So some people, I think you're an Enneagram 3, right? Yeah, for Enneagram 3s, it's really easy to sit in that achievement, achieve, and burnout happens in a week. And so I know that I'm living in health, and I'm like, no, I'm actually good where this is, and good where I'm currently sitting. But when it gets to the point where I'm just being scared and comfortable, and I really feel like I'm supposed to be doing X, Y, Z, that's when I know that there's oh, I probably need to be making a shift right now. So I'm totally in agreement with you. Hey y'all, I wanted to pop in here for a couple of quick announcements. One, we are so grateful that you are a part of this community. You have been cheering us on, pointing to which episodes have been most impactful for you, and sharing with your friends. Please keep doing that. We're so encouraged by it. If you've been around for a while, we would be honored if you gave us a review on iTunes. By you giving a review, you're helping other people find this weekly career advice goodness. I firmly believe, and I know you do too, that if more people showed up loving their work, it would be a better world to live in. So please head on over to iTunes and give us a quick review. It should only take about 10 seconds. Now, if this is your first time joining us, welcome. We are so glad to have you be a part of the family. We firmly believe in bringing the human back into human resources over here at the Your Career Story podcast. So if you would like to put a face to the name, I would love to meet you. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search for my name, Jenna Viviano, and that is Jenna with one N, Or you can find me on Instagram at Jenna_Viviano. Again, that's Jenna with one N. And message me telling me what you've been listening to on the podcast. If you do that, I'll send you a freebie to kick your career into high gear. So just to recap, if you've been a listener for a while, give us a review on iTunes. And if you're new, let's just get connected on LinkedIn or Instagram. Oh, and make sure you hit subscribe. All right, friends, back to the episode. Now, I want you to tell me, when did you know, so you took this, you're thinking about potentially taking, the Refined Collective full time. So what do you feel like is, a lot of people ask the question of like, how do you know when it's good to take your side hustle full time? Like, what are some like metrics or things that you think about when trying to make that transition?
Yeah, well, I think different people are going to approach that from a different lens. And the place that I approach it now is, until the refined woman is making the bulk of my income, I'm not switching over. And so I think just plain and simple, like financially, is this a viable option? And am I setting myself up for success? Like what are the financial goals I have? And I think also on top of that, like what is the lifestyle I want to have? So I am very clear that I want to have work-life balance. I don't want to work more than 40 to 45 hours a week. And I want to set myself up for a trajectory of eventually working less and less hours, like over the years. And so is my business able to withhold that? Do I have a framework set up where that is sustainable? And up until a year and a half ago, the Refined Woman hadn't made any money. It was basically an expensive hobby. And I got all the free clothes I wanted, skincare, shoes. I could go to events, stay at hotels for free. And that was fun and sexy. But I was like, great, well, I'm going to be like a really well-dressed homeless person. Like this is popular. My friend Jenna Kutcher says popular doesn't pay the bills. And that's so true. So I know that it's time to go full-time in the Refined Woman when I see the numbers. And right now, my photography business is still making more than half of what I bring in. And my hourly rate for like nothing at this point is comparing to my hourly rate for photography. So I'm staying with that. And on top of that, I also think it's wise to have multiple revenue streams.
100%.
Like, at this point, I've been shooting for 10 years. My photography business is a well-oiled machine. I'm not promoting it. I do not have to chase down clients. I've built a reputation and presence in the photography industry that I have retainer clients. And I can basically just show up, plug and chug. I know what to do. It's very, like, it's a well-oiled machine. And so, like, if I can keep that revenue stream up and it's, costing me less than 10 hours a month, and I'm able to make this like really great living off of it, then to me, I'm like, well, it's not wise for me to let go of that yet. Like I want to have those multiple streams. And even when I do go full time, like maybe that is the money that I use to save for a house or
strategic risk is kind of what I liken it to. Right. Like when I was transitioning from side hustle to full hustle, I tell people all the time, I don't advise just like launching into something because it's just really stressful and you can't actually be creative. You can't actually do the things that you want to do. And so I built my side hustle up over 2 years and I got it to a place where it wasn't necessarily matching what I was making in my full-time job, but I was doing it in like the crevices of like my day. Right. So I knew that if I took it full time and was able to take that time to focus on it, I could actually like scale it. And at that time I was only making money through themuse.com really. I mean, I had a couple clients here and there, but that really got me started. And I knew immediately I had to start diversifying. So I wasn't like, sorry, The Muse, I'm not taking any of your clients anymore. I'm only focusing on my own. That wasn't the case. That would be foolish. And now I think about it as bonus money. Like anytime a client comes in, I'm like, oh, that's bonus money. I wasn't planning for that. Yeah. And so I think it's 100% like a mindset shift and like getting you closer to that goal. Question. This is just total side question for you. What's been your favorite like thing to shoot or person to shoot, if you can share?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. I think The first national editorial campaign that I did was such a transformational experience for me. So that probably is one of my favorite shoots. I was still living in LA at the time, and this brand reached out to my boss to see if he could photograph this campaign, and most editorial campaigns have like zero budget. It's like,
interesting. I didn't know that.
Basically, yeah. So you're shooting the cover of Vogue. You're just getting your costs covered. Like, it's a resume builder.
Wow.
So people are not making money from editorial campaigns. They're making money from, if Pepsi hires them for their ad campaign. But so they did not have hardly a budget at all. And so he passed on it. And I was like, well, I'll do it. And they're like, okay. So I literally had never been head shooter on any photography job. As of this point, I had no idea how to use studio lighting. And so literally I'm like flying to New York, Googling on the airplane, how do I turn on the studio lights? Like, I had no idea. I was like super unequipped. And, the shoot came, and we were in this incredible, like, studio in Queens that was just all these props. And, this model had been on like covers of all these magazines all over the world, and there's stylists and, hair and makeup and assistants. Fabulous. And it just felt like, oh my gosh, I was like, this is so amazing. And the day like came and went, and it just like flew by. It was so much fun. It was so amazing. And it was really the first time that I saw like, I can do this. Like, I am good at this. And then even, I think what was even more transformational on that day was, the model came up to me at the end of the day, and she was like, I just want to, thank you for asking me my name. No photographer has ever taken the time to get to know me on set. And that, it was like one of those things where I was like, all right, I'm in the right place. Because like, I want to be a voice to women, and I had this limiting belief that I wouldn't get as many jobs because I was a woman in a man's world. And that because I was a woman, I didn't get networked with as much at events with my boss. Cause like all the guys would be sharing jobs, and I'd walk up and they'd just like instantly start talking about their wives. And I'd be like, I'm not trying to hit on you. I'm just trying to network just like you guys are. And so it was the first time I saw actually my femininity is not a liability. It's an asset. And then I saw that I am capable of doing things. I am capable of taking risks, and I'm able to create really good results, because then, you're at the shoot and you're like, I think it goes well, but then I edited the images, and there's still like some of my favorite images, and it wasn't supposed to be picked up for this print magazine, but it did. It became the cover shoot, and then it ran on 2 national ad campaigns. And so I just felt so proud of myself. And that's really where everything changed. And that shoot was like nothing was the same after that.
That's cool. Do you know who Hailey Hoover is by chance? That name ring a bell? Her husband works at Vogue, and she works for Refinery 29 now, but she worked for Brides magazine. She was on actually episode 3, and she talks about how to land a fashion job in New York. And she has a very, very similar story to you of being on set and like connecting with somebody, and they like asked her if she was a Christian, because they could just tell by like how she was treating them. It was very interesting. It's a super interesting story. So if you're listening to this, episode 3, Hailey Hoover, it's super fascinating, but y'all should get connected. I should connect you guys, because she's awesome. Absolutely. And she's in a similar wheelhouse that you are. But okay, so tell me, what is next for you? So do you think you'll pivot again? How do you, actually kind of a question alongside that, like, how do you find the opportunity or the space to be free and gracious with yourself? Because I think a lot of us put a lot of pressure on ourselves not to pivot because we feel like we're like a job hopper or whatever it is. So how do you find, like, what do you tell yourself that it's okay to pivot, or walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I think, as humans, the constant, what's going to be constant throughout our whole life is change. So we have to get really comfortable with that. And we live in an age and in a time where we're not going to be like our parents' generation, where our parents worked for the same company for 60 years. That's not the story of our generation. So I think getting comfortable with transition is going to serve us in every area of our life. And one of the biggest like if I can say, if there's a book you should read, there's this book by Seth Godin called The Dip. That have you read that?
No, I've read some of his other stuff. I've read that one though.
It's incredible. I mean, it's less than 100 pages. I think it took me a couple hours to read, but I read it the first week that I worked for the photographer I worked for. And it talks about, when to say yes and when to say no, when to lean in and when to move on in our jobs. Because what happens is, in every job we get into or any career, like the first few weeks, you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing and sexy and sparkly. And yeah, of course I'll run and go get the coffee and I'll make the copies at the copy machine. Or, oh my gosh, I am my own business owner. I can work from home in my yoga pants. Like it all seems so shiny at first. And then at some point in every job that you're in, you're going to hit a dip. And the reality is we all want like this CEO status of I want to work 5 hours a week or, have my private jet or my 401k. Like, I want to have it made, but we don't want to go through the dip to get there. And sometimes the dip lasts for 6 weeks. It could last 6 months. It could last 10 years. And what we need to discern is when do I need to lean into the dip? Because if you're just leaving a job or you're just wanting to pivot because you're like, well, I'm not passionate about this anymore. Well, our feelings change 1,000 times a day. And guess what? In every job that you have, there's going to be something. There's going to be a lot of things that you don't want to do, but we choose to show up out of like diligence. And so I would say like, number one, read that book because I think it really helps, especially a millennial generation where we're like, driven by our, passions and pursuits. Like what a privilege to even get to think about, well, am I passionate about this? Like, I think that's such a privilege even to be able to have that mindset and conversation, like, and that has to be acknowledged. So yeah, I think what encourages me to be free and gracious with myself in a season of pivot. I think for me, it's like going back to like my vision, like what's my why? What do I believe I'm here on this earth to do? And that kind of acts like a framework to help me discern like, what are my next steps? And, my vision, you read it in the beginning, is to empower women to embrace their beauty, identity, and value through storytelling. So is X move gonna propel me closer to that vision or take me further away from it? And I think like I'm in an interesting little pivot right now as I'm writing my first book, and I don't know what will be the outcome of that. I've never done that before, but I go back to, is this in alignment with my vision and my why? And it definitely is. But, I think it's important to think as well about, it's so easy to think about what's the career I want? What's the career I want? Like, what's the life I want? And, we're willing to do anything and everything for a career. I mean, we pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for education. I took an internship where I got paid $7 a day. Like we're willing to move cross country and do all these things. And yet with other areas of our lives, like love or romance or, family planning, or even just like, what do I see for myself outside of my job? Like we don't really give ourselves as much space to think about that stuff. So I really think in regards to even just like career pivots, like kind of really spending time, like what's the life I want? And, Jenna, I'm 34, I'm single. I want to be in a meaningful relationship. I want to get married. I want to have kids. And so a huge part of like looking into my career trajectory at this point is, all right, do I have space in my life for the relationship?
Oh, girl, that's a big one.
Like, yes. And how do I set up my business today so that I can be a mom in 5 years, or I can have the opportunity to be a stay-at-home mom if I want? So those are kind of some of the underlying forces that are driving a lot of my career decisions right now is what's the life I want and how do I set myself up long term to make steps towards that season, even if in the present I don't see it.
Totally.
You know?
I mean, that's something I did when it's funny you say that. I had that exact same thought when I was leaving the New York Stock Exchange. So that was, 5 years ago. And I said, I wanted to start a business so that when the time comes, I want to have a family. I want to be a mom. I want to, and I do believe that there is value in being home with kids as much as possible. If you're able to, right? And so I wanted to, but I knew I couldn't for myself and who I am, I don't think I could ever just not work at all. And so I wanted to create a business that I could potentially do both. We'll see if it happens really well. And that's kind of the steps that I've been taking in my business of why I'm I don't know if I can sustain the one-on-one coaching if I have kids. I don't know if that's going to be a really good fit for our family kind of thinking and moving forward. And you are totally right about creating that space. That's the biggest thing that I think has been a friction point for, I'm newly not single, which is I've been single for a long time. And I'd actually followed your content for forever because it was super, super valuable and super comforting and encouraging and taking action on my romantic side of my life. So if you are a single female and you are listening to this, you absolutely need to check Kat out and all of her resources because she's got so much wisdom there. But I noticed that was that was the hardest shift, I think, for Brent and I, is that I go from how many years of being me, career, to being oh wait, I have to create space for this man because he's finally here. And now what do I do?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the number one things I talk to my girls about or my women about when they go through my Activate Your Dating Life course is, we're oh, there's no good guys out there. And where are they? I'm going to be single forever. Yeah. And there's nowhere to meet guys. And then I ask them all but 5 questions. And I'm all right, so Monday nights you're watching The Bachelorette with your girlfriends. Tuesday night you're going to yoga class, which is, by the way, a predominantly female exercise class. Wednesday night you have your all women Bible study or book club. Thursday night, you're going to tapas, another female centered activity. Oh, you don't really want to go out on Friday night. You just want to watch movies with the girls. I'm your life does not reflect your priorities. Yeah. And it's a huge challenge that I've had for myself. And now the women that I mentor and coach and take through my courses is, why are we so willing to be so strategic about our career, but our love life, we're well, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. And I'm gosh, I hope that a person that's a brain surgeon is gonna actually go to his classes or her classes and take the test and pass them. And if you want to be a brain surgeon, you have to be super intentional about it. I would not feel comfortable with someone operating on me that was well, we'll see how this works out. If it works well, it works well. I'm we get to shift our mindset with how we show up in our relationship lives as well. Why would I not create space for or be intentional or take ownership over this part of my life? I think it's definitely a limiting belief that women can have is well, I have, there's nothing I can do about it. Well, God's going to do what God's going to do. That's, that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But we get to collaborate with God in that. And we get to take ownership for how we're showing up.
100%. I see that reflect in my life as well. So I totally agree with what you're saying. Yeah. Kat, this has been so fun. I don't want to take up any more of your time. I know we're ending kind of this show. So why don't you tell folks where they can find out about you or they can reach you or connect with you. And then also about your course. I would love for you to kind of give a little snippet about that of who would be a great fit for something like that.
Absolutely. So my website is therefinedwoman.com. My podcast is The Refined Collective. You can find that on my website, on iTunes, on Spotify, anywhere where you listen to podcasts. I do weekly episodes. I have solo shows. I have really awesome guests. And then I'm super active on Instagram, which is The Refined Woman. And all of that is AN, not plural EN. And then twice a year, I launch my Activate Your Dating Life program. And I am launching it I think right about now when this episode is going live. And the Activate Your Dating Life program is for any woman, and typically a woman of faith who feels you know what? dating as a single woman in today's culture is a struggle fest. I feel lonely. I feel like I'm always in the friend zone. I feel like I never meet good guys. Like it seems like there's a million more women out there than men. I don't know how to flirt. Online dating is overwhelming. So any single woman of faith that honestly feels like discouraged by Christian dating, disillusioned with the whole idea of like social media and online dating, and just overwhelmed at the idea of it all, like I want to support you because it doesn't have to be a struggle. Like it really, really doesn't. Like this season of singleness in our lives can actually be really fun, full of freedom, full of purpose. And it is actually possible to put yourself in a position to be really clear about what you want, be walking in your worth and putting yourself out there in really healthy ways, and also still be pursued by men. So if that is at all you, if you're like, man, I am single as a dollar bill, it has been a gazillion years since I have even had a date, or I've been in the friend zone for the umpteenth time, or maybe you're like, I just had a date last night, like wherever you are on that spectrum, if you have any discouragement in singleness, like this is a program that I think would really support you to really help activate and walk out your singleness with clarity and hope and freedom.
Yeah. And I kind of want to touch on something that I think is really important. Yeah. I know for myself, I invested in a program very similar, and it was when I put my money where my mouth was that I actually started making change. And I believe that for everybody. You can't just like consume information. You have to start making action. And courses like this help actually bring the theory to life. So it's giving you the support, the community, and the people that you need. And it's putting your money where your mouth is. You're not going to make changes unless you invest in something. I firmly see that. It's been true in my life. When I'm ready to make a big career change or a big pivot in my business, I'm investing in something to help get me from point A to point B. And so I think for anyone that's listening and you're like, well, yeah, I could just read things online. No, that's not the answer here.
I totally believe
where your mouth is. And if you really care about your romantic side of things, the romantic side of your life, the personal side of your life, or even your professional side of your life, whatever, you need to, if you want to move more in that direction and heal that part of your life, then you need to start putting money where your mouth is. So I would just drop that in there for you.
Yeah, girl. Yes. And even if you're listening and you just want like a foot in the door, I have a free downloadable PDF called 6 Tips to Activating Your Dating Life. And that's totally free. It's action forward. And you can get that at bit.ly/TRW dating tips. So bit.ly/TRW dating tips.
Awesome. That sounds good. Thank you so much, Kat, again.
Yeah, thank you. It was so much fun. All right. Talk to you soon.
Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for listening to Your Career Story podcast. I would love to get to meet you. And there are a couple of ways that we can connect in between episodes. First and foremost, you know I love my LinkedIn. Second is via Instagram. And third is over on my website. I actually have a special spot just for you full of fun, free resources. So all you have to do is go to www.jennaviviano.com/resources. Super simple, for a bunch of freebies that will help you boost your career. Hope to see you next week.